Here is the gauge cluster all finished up and printed. If you missed the other videos, this was printed in ASA and I printed it on that Cobra Plus after having done some upgrades and stuff like that after the printer started giving me issues. So the printer itself seems to have been fixed, and I'm pretty thrilled that this managed to survive a monsoon storm that caused a ton of power outages and weather changing, humidity levels changing. It seemed to do at least okay. At least it got the part out and finished, and that's all that I wanted. In fact, I am responsible for this crack here because as I was hammering in the piece for the warning lights, which we'll talk about this in a second, but as I was hammering that in, I did manage to split this down a layer that was already beginning to kind of separate, or that was already weak. But this shouldn't be too big of a deal, just a little bit of super glue to hold it together, and I can come back and plastic weld it from the bottom. And this will all need to get covered in body filler, primer, and paint, and sanded, and all that other kind of stuff anyway. So still lots of work left to be done on the instrument housing cluster itself. So let's talk about the warning light system setup here. So I tried two different colors here. These are both PETG, just translucent PETG. So I tried the white because my initial plan was to do potentially different colored warning lights for each thing for each item that I want to be notified of. There's 5 spots for 3mm LEDs. Essentially, the seatbelt warning light. I have a light for coolant temperature. The parking brake, the parking pad wear sensors, or parking brake pad wear sensors, and an alternator warning light. So I don't really need the coolant temperature light because that will already be included on the gauge. So I have basically a free spot for another sort of warning light that I might be able to include for another system that isn't necessarily monitored. So I think it'd be kind of cool maybe to do like a speed and reference sensor light or something that shows that the ignition circuit is getting power. So I could potentially run a 12-volt wire LED from the ignition coil out and throw that up there. And that way I'll have another way of knowing that the spark system is good. But anyways, I digress. PETG, 3mm LEDs, and I think the red is the way to go. I also messed around with some different color LEDs, and I could potentially change the color of each individual LED, and you'd still be able to register what color it is. So I could always have that be different colors for each individual thing, just to make it easier. I did render up a faceplate that had the icons cut it out, so that they were supposed to back glow the design, but I did mess up when I was designing this little cutout, and I made it just a little bit smaller than the factory one, and my printer just couldn't handle the detail of how small and intricate some of the stuff was for those warning pads. I might try some decals, because I can always try to 3D print some, or not 3D print, but I can always try to have some decals cut, or a piece of acrylic or something laser cut or whatever, something that can handle the precision. But I think that this will get the point across, and I like the fact that instead of just having the one major warning light now that's tied to separate systems, that you can actually just right away look at this and then know, oh, okay, my brake system has a fault, or potentially the ignition system has a fault, or the charge circuit is definitely having a fault or an error or something like that. Because even with the other gauges, while they might have they'll have like backlights and warning lights as part of the gauge face, it still is a little bit ambiguous, because your brake pad warning light could come on when either your brake pad sensors are low or when the fluid level is low. So it's just kind of hit or miss, and it's sort of the same thing with the coolant temperature. I had an instance where when I was trying to replace the coolant temperature sensor, the new sensor was either not calibrated or was incorrect, and so the gauge would immediately go to overheating, but the warning light wouldn't come on, etc. So I don't know, I just feel like this is a little bit more of a simplified version, a way to do things, and also a bit necessary in this scenario, because the speed hug gauges aren't going to obviously have the warning lights for the seat belts, the brake pad sensors, etc. Built into the gauge faces the way that the factory wants to. So this was just kind of my solution to tackle that, and I figured just try to keep it simple. So with all that being said, the gauges are ordered. They're having a sale right now. Again, I'm not affiliated or sponsored with them. I just recommend that you wait to go for a sale because these gauges are incredibly expensive. If I wasn't in a scenario where I had to do this now, to be honest, I probably wouldn't, just because of the cost factor alone. I'm definitely not in a financial position to be doing this, but I need to get the car going because car is going to equal way to get to work. So yeah, speed hut gauges. I think we finally got all the major systems figured out, and I'm pretty happy with my overall thought map and how everything seems to be adding up and working out. So as I mentioned in the last video, the next thing that I'll do is, now that I have this filament just kind of loaded and the printer's working good, I'm going to go ahead and load up a model of my PCB design just to make sure that the dimensions are correct, and we'll see if those plug into the gauges, the gauge wiring harness in the car. So it's going to take a little bit of time for the gauges to be made and shipped out. And on top of that, I'm gonna still have to order these circuit boards to be made and shipped out as well. So probably a couple months left in this. I'm hoping maybe like 8 or so weeks. Again, the other factor that's kind of hindering me here is just trying to pay for everything. So trying to be moderate and responsible and still try to figure stuff out at the same time. So yeah, overall, I'm excited to get this finished up. I think the next couple videos I'll record myself doing the finish work on here. I've never personally used Bondo and all that other kind of stuff, so it's going to be a first for me. So we'll see how this turns out. Worst case scenario, we can always just print another one if I screw it up. So that's going to do it for this video. Stay tuned, and I'll see you guys in the next one.